Vignettes are a really quick and easy way to change the mood of your image. You've probably seen them in popular mobile applications where they darken the corners and everything just looks different. That's really easy to do in Photoshop. We can add them, we can remove them, and of course, we can change them. So I want to show you a few tips and tricks for doing that in Photoshop. Okay, so I have two images open in Camera Raw, and the first one I want to talk about is fixing vignetting, or removing it. And in this first shot, we've got a wide-angle image shooting into the sun, and it's very pronounced that there's this fall-off or darkening of the corners. Now, in order to fix that, all I need to do is come over to Lens Correction and click on Enable Lens Profile Corrections. And if I toggle that, I'll see that there's a lot going on. I'm removing the distortion, but I'm also brightening the corners. And it's as easy to remove vignetting as that. If you wanted to make it a little bit brighter, you've got a slider down here for that. But let's talk about introducing it, because I think that's what most people want to do. And this is a great example of an image that wants additive vignetting. I shot this in a warehouse. I wanted to capture this particular gritty aesthetic, and it needs something else. For this image, we're going to go over to our effects panel, and we're going to use post-crop vignetting. And what that means is even if I crop it, the vignette will follow the constraints of the crop. And the workflow I like to use is to aggressively darken it, more than you'd think you'd need to. And the reason we're going to do that is we want to know where the bounds of the vignette are. So the next thing I do is I pull it in. Now I can clearly see the shape, boxy or round. I can feather it out and see the edges. And the last thing I do is I come back up and I adjust the amount to get it just right. And at this point I might back the midpoint out a bit as well. A dramatically different image looks entirely different with an additive vignette. Okay. So now, let's talk about a brighter image and how we would take care of brightening the corners. Now, we could do that in Camera Raw like I just did, but I want to show you how to do any of these in Photoshop because lens correction within Photoshop will allow you to do the same stuff. So bright image, I'm going to come over to Custom, and I've got some vignette controls. I don't want to darken this one, I want to lighten the edges. And this is just another way to do it. You could use the exact same files we used before within Photoshop here. The last thing I want to show you is a non-RAW file going into Camera Raw to handle adding a vignette off-center. Okay, so here's our image. I like it, it's a good portrait, but my eye doesn't quite know where to look, so I want to darken the edges of it. And in order to open a non-RAW file prior to CC, I need to come into my Preferences and go to File Handling and tell Camera Raw to open JPEGs or TIFFs. Now, I'm using CC, so I have this available to me as a filter. I'm going to pop in here, and I'm going to use my radial filter. And you just draw the basic shape that you want, move that where you want it. I'm going to apply this to his face. If we want to make it larger or rotate it, we can do that really easily here. And once we get the basic shape, it doesn't have to be perfect, where we want to make sure that our control down here is on the outside. We're going to make the outside darker. And we have a couple of controls. As with the rest of Camera Raw, exposure is a bit of a sledgehammer. That's pretty heavy-handed, so go easy on exposure. You might find that just backing down highlights would be effective. And all you really need to do here is adjust the feathering to get that looking how you want. And we can quickly toggle between before and after, and you can see that the change is pretty noticeable. So that's how you'd handle it when it's off-center. So whether you're removing vignetting, adding it, darkening or lightening, now you know some great tricks for your playbook.